Good morning, everybody. I'm John Gehring. I'm the Catholic Program Director at Faith in Public Life. It's great to have all of you with us for this conversation focused on Black women, faith, and the future of racial justice. It's always great to partner with Trinity Washington University. We had a wonderful event back in 2019 that feels like a decade ago now, and it was focused on undocumented students and activism and faith, and we had a wonderful gathering, and Trinity is always such a gracious host, so I'm really grateful to be partnering with Trinity again. I want to hand it over briefly to President Pat McGuire at Trinity, who will offer a few opening reflections. President McGuire.
Thank you so much, John, and many thanks to our friends and partners at Faith in Public Life. What a great organization you are. I'm also deeply grateful to Sister Ann Howard, Trinity's Director of Campus Ministry, Sister of Notre Dame de Namur, whose stewardship of our campus faith life and work with our Billiard Center for Social Justice is just amazing. I am so proud of the Trinity women on this panel, and I am so eager to hear their reflections on the critical issues we face in the quest for racial justice. We are one of the nation's historic Catholic women's colleges, now approaching our 125th anniversary, and Trinity today is also proudly a predominantly Black institution as well as a Hispanic serving institution, and we proudly and firmly stand with our students and their families in solidarity against the chronic racism, white supremacy, racial and ethnic hatred that corrupts our society and destroys too many lives. Our work at Trinity is animated by our commitment to a faith tradition that is life-giving and full of hope, welcoming students from many different traditions and backgrounds, all joining in the search for knowledge as the means to develop solutions to the challenges of contemporary society. This year, we have undertaken an initiative to express our commitments in a very tangible way. Trinity Dare, Driving Actions for Racial Equity, challenges all of us to find very specific ways to address racism and inequity through insisting on greater opportunities for these talented students. We seek to widen career pipelines as the means to be sure that Black and brown women have seats at all of the tables where important economic, political, and social decisions are made. We do this grounded in our commitment to social justice, with the first principle supporting the dignity and worth of every human life. Our faith calls us to be advocates and activists for racial justice and true racial equity. Thanks to our students, to Sister Ann and John and all at Faith in Public Life for giving us this occasion today to reflect on the ways in which our students call us to action for racial justice. Thank you.
Thank you, President McGuire. Appreciate those comments and just so grateful for everything you're doing at Trinity, but also more broadly in higher education to really shine a spotlight on racial justice and racial equity issues. So I'm grateful for that. I wanted to just say a few things to kind of help frame our conversation this morning. I wanted to have this conversation today because I think we're at a really interesting and important moment when it comes to Black women and Black women of faith in particular, finally starting to get the attention that has long been deserved for being really at the vanguard, the forefront of so many social justice movements, whether it's in our churches, in our culture, and in our politics. So that really drew me to this conversation. If you think about it, just think about the last year. Georgia saw historic voter turnout and was decisive in ending the Trump presidency, in large part because of the hard work of Black Christian women like Stacey Abrams of Fair Fight, Latasha Brown, who co-founded Black Voters Matter. Their work on registration and getting the vote out was unbelievable. You see somebody like Representative Cori Bush of St. Louis, the first Black woman to represent Missouri, an ordained pastor who came out of the Black Lives Matter movement. And of course, Amanda Gorman, who blew us all away at the inauguration, a 22-year-old poet and also a parishioner at St. Bridget Catholic Church in Los Angeles, who I think really at least reminded me of kind of the sacramental power of words to both heal us, but also to challenge us as a country. And of course, we saw the election of the first Black woman and first Indian American woman in our history, Vice President Kamala Harris. So we've really always seen how Black women have been at the forefront of movement for social justice. Whether it was Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad or Fannie Lou Hamer's Freedom Democratic Party, to Sister Thea Bowman in our own Catholic Church, Elisa Garza co-founding Black Lives Matter. But at the same time, and you all know this, we're still grappling with white supremacy, Christian nationalism, and I think also, and most relevant for this conversation, a particular form of contempt and disrespect for Black women in power. And I think we saw that most acutely when now former President Trump, when he was challenged by Black women members of Congress, told them to go back to the country that they came from. And so, that level of sort of contempt, I think, runs through a lot of our culture and our politics, and something that we might talk about today. We also know that Black women are still paid far less than white men in the workplace. We know that Black women often have less access to good prenatal care. And we also know that the coronavirus pandemic has really underscored and exacerbated existing racial inequalities. So I think holding both sort of the hope and the new energy and the promise that Black women are showing right now, but being very mindful of the continuing existence of racism and white supremacy is something we have to grapple with. So the Trinity students I have today are an incredible group. They're smart, they're committed activists, and I also really want to commend all of you for your candor and your courage to be here and have this conversation, because I know we'll talk about some things that are difficult, and you'll share some personal stories and journeys that are not easy to share publicly, but they're ones that I think can help us. I know I have a lot to learn, and I know people watching really are looking forward to hearing your wisdom. So let me introduce all of you very briefly, and then we'll jump in with some opening reflections and then get to some good conversation. And I should say there's one panelist who unfortunately was supposed to join us, had a family emergency this morning, so we keep her in our prayers this morning. Let me first introduce Barakel Butler. She's a forensic science major. She's a junior, but will graduate early next semester. And we should congratulate her because she was recently selected as the first place recipient of the 2021 NASA DC Space Grant Consortium Student STEM Research Presentation Competition, which is a mouthful. And the topic is way above my head intellectually, so I won't even try to explain what she won the award for, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense if I tried to talk about it. And she wants to work in sort of crime lab technician as her career progresses. So thank you, Barakel, for joining us. We also have Chanel Mullings, who's with the class of 2021. She was born in Jamaica and came to the US. She went to high school in Maryland, and she's majoring in healthcare administration and minoring in community health services. And she's also doing, I believe, an internship with the DC Department of Health. So thank you, Chanel, for being with us. I'm also excited to have Michelle Newkirk. She's a junior and a human relations major, and she's from Prince George's County. Along with her studies, she works for the Prince George's County Health Connect, where she helps people get enrolled with healthcare, and she would like to be a marriage and family counselor. So thank you, Michelle, for joining us. Barakel, if you could start us off just with some reflections of sort of what's top of your mind and in your heart right now as you think about this topic that we're exploring today. Did we lose Barakel? All right, I know she's been having some tech problems, so we're gonna roll with the punches there. And Michelle, do you wanna start us off?
Sure. Oh, okay, sorry. It's the same question for me, right?
Yeah, if you could start off just with some reflections, yeah.
Okay, so like you said, John, I am Michelle Newkirk, like Michelle, but my. I mean, this is a really thought-provoking conversation that we're having today regarding Black women, our faith. Mine in particularly is Christianity, and then injustice and the things that we're living through, things that we've experienced, and just how we process these things, or if we are even processing them. So, I don't want to give away too much, but that's pretty much, I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone else's perspective. And yeah, and everybody out there in the world that's, watching.
All right. Chanel?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, President McQuire, and everyone that's watching. As John mentioned, my name is Chanel Mullings, and I was born and raised in Jamaica. I migrated here in 2014, and as as a Black woman in America today, I'm very hopeful to see, the many accomplishments that Black women, here, achieve over the years. We see women like current Vice President Kamala Harris, as John mentioned earlier. And I feel like, being the first Black woman, and also who's the, of Jamaican descent, is, and literally she's like one, heartbeat away from presidency here in the US. We all know this is a huge achievement for, and very inspirational for me and, my fellow, Black women and young women and, students and, everyone. And this makes me believe that as a Black woman here in the US, I can accomplish anything I put my mind to. And what actually like really, nerve-wracking though, and worries me today, when it comes to race, is the fact that, having young men in my life, meaning, my grandpa, I have younger brothers, and, father role models in my life. And, for example, having my 5-year-old baby brother, he sees a TV, watching TV and sees, all these, street, violence and what's going on in the world. And for me to actually explain to a 5-year-old, and, he's today, in society, kids, they know, they're very, smart, intelligent these days. And my 5-year-old baby brother, he's very, smart. So him seeing stuff, on, the news and just TV in general, seeing people being killed, and, when it, the riots and, such going on, it's very hard to tell, being a sister, to, to explain to him what is happening, and, to let him know that, people in this world just don't, like you for, who you are based on your skin color. And it's just, the worst part is having, the conversation, more often, because I do not know how to actually explain to him. I don't know how to have that conversation as a big sister to a, a younger, sibling. Yes, I really don't know how to explain to him these issues. And yeah, I get scared. I mentioned about the, the father role models in my life, my grandpa, my stepdad, and my other brother. He's in college, and I worry, about, getting a call one day that someone, one of them is being hurt there in the street, and because he met someone that didn't like him, of his color or something, anything. So yeah, we worry about our own. And for me, my grandpa, he's a father figure to me. And if something to really, happen to him, knowing that with all of, with the injustice and discrimination and stuff um, that's, that's going on, out there, and I get a call that something happened to him, I'll be very, devastated. And yeah.
Thank you. And we'll come back to some of those points that you brought up, because they're really important ones as we move on with the conversation. But I appreciate you kind of setting the table for that. Maisha, I wanted to ask you, when we had a conversation, we had a really interesting conversation, you and I, about what happened at the U.S. Capitol, the violent insurrection. And of course, that day we saw white supremacists, really is the word for it, white supremacists had, in one hand, a sign that said Jesus saves, and in the other hand, a Confederate flag. And, when we spoke, you said something interesting to me. You said, this America first and capitalist Christianity is not the same as my Christianity. And I think that's a really important observation, because as we know, Christian nationalism has nothing to do with the Gospels. Can you say more about what how you process that insurrection at the Capitol, particularly as a Black woman, and then this whole conversation around Christian nationalism, which is getting so much attention today?
Yes, I do recall the conversation. It was really, cool to get into. For me to really think about, what is Christian nationalism? Why, what is this, all about? And I can tell you today that it's not Christian. It doesn't add up to what our values are as Christians, for people who are Christians. Believe that I was thinking about this topic, and one thing that came to mind is a wolf is not a sheep because it's wearing sheep's clothing. And so if I were to elaborate on that statement, I would basically say that just because, somebody proclaims Jesus and, uses Jesus as a mascot to promote these ideals doesn't make them Christian, right? And so, for example, you and I we know that God is just. As Christians, we know that, but in the Constitution and the Pledge of Allegiance, there's, one nation under God is in a lot of what, we see that is American. So on dollar bills, in a lot of, like I said, the Pledge of Allegiance and the Constitution and preamble and all kinds of documents that state who we are as Americans, it says we're one nation under God. But if we were one nation under God, under being submitted to the relationship with Him, the laws and ideals of what it means to be a Christian, would injustice, for example, would be handled much differently, because God is just. So the issue of injustice and the stretch of how far, the injustices that we face as Black women, as Black people, as brown people, as minorities go, handled much differently if we really were one nation under God, and not one nation under God that can't be checked by anybody else. And so, another point that kind of coincides or correlates with injustice in America and Christian nationalism not being Christian is that when it comes to the things that Americans or the people that came to establish this country had done, there's this issue of not taking responsibility for the actions, right? For your actions. And so, and I don't want to say that, Christians do this. Christians do it, but I would like to highlight the individual, because people, Christians are still people as well. And every individual has a choice to make, and they will choose or they won't choose. And everybody has that right or that option, right? And so in this context with Christian nationalists and the fact that there's like a will to not acknowledge what you did. There's a will, like almost adamant desire to ignore the fact that you've massacred millions of people, bodies of people, to be where you are, to create this almost utopia for your people, for white people, and to create this supreme nation that doesn't really know what to do with the residue, which would be the immigrants and the Black people who you took from their home to be who you are today. And so now it's like, this whole it's a mess. But the point though that I want to make and really highlight the difference between Christianity and white nationalism is the relationship and the lack of relationship. With Christianity, there's a highlight of relationship with people. There's an acceptance of you for who you are, like you and me, John, you and me, John, you and I, and Chanel and Raquel. If we were all to go out and have a good time, people might see that as a nationalist may see that as weird because I'm a Black woman, you're a white man, and you are a Black woman as well from a whole nother culture with another ethnic background, and so for us to come together with different beliefs, different ideals, different identities, and have a good time. No, you don't get together like that. And so just to go back to the wolf is not a sheep because it wears sheep's clothing. That's that's how I view Christian nationalism, the using Jesus as a mascot instead of having him as a friend. It's a really big differential between the two. They're not the same. And I hope that answered the question and kind of get.
No, absolutely. I love that metaphor you used of the wolf in the sheep's clothing and also Jesus as a mascot, because I think we saw that so often during the Trump presidency, the way that he even used religion as a prop. We went to the church and held up the Bible, just literally using faith as a backdrop to advance policies that were harmful to Black and brown communities. So really good analogy. Chanel, did you want to address that too? Some of those themes that Michelle brought up around what happened at the Capitol that day or Christian nationalism. I'd love to hear from you on that.
Well, for me, it was just like a all moment. It was like, wow, because it's like, it's a a big, building, coming in. It was very shocking for me that I've never seen this, in history. And again, as Michelle mentioned, I'm from a whole different cultural background, and from when I've seen it, I was very in shock. And the building and everything that was going on is close to Trinity, so it was very sad. And knowing the people of Christianity, like when I saw that, I was at that moment, I was like, no, I don't, it can't be. Like, you're 1 minute you're doing this, and 1 minute, so which road are you're leading to? So for me, I was just in shock. And I try not to follow up with the news sometimes, because at one point it was getting nerve-wracking, because when there's a lot of situations that's been going on. 1 minute is COVID, we have COVID going on. We have people protesting Black Lives Matter, and then that small issue that Michelle mentioned, Michelle or Michelle, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, it's you got it.
Michelle, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So yeah, seeing that, I was very in shock, knowing that those people too were actually involved in, at their, U.S. Capitol, at the building, doing, all that. I could not keep up with the news, keep watching it, because I have people in my family that, of, faith and, strong believers of certain. So it was very shocking for me seeing that.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if Barakel is still having, it looks like she's still having tech problems, unfortunately, but I wanted to sort of introduce a few things she said into the conversation, just because, I thought she had some points that were really important, and I'd love to hear if you all had some thoughts on it. But when I spoke with her before our conversation here today, one thing that she pointed out, and I think it does sort of dovetail with some of what we've been talking about, is that the Trump era was obviously devastating for Black and Brown communities. But the point that she made that I think was really interesting to me was that sometimes the focus was too much on Donald Trump, and that she said that, and I thought this was a really good point, that he was really a mirror of what a lot of the country thought about, or he's more of a symptom, not the core problem. And she said, he really mirrored the insecurities of half the country when it came to sort of racial anxieties and the changing demographics in our country. We're becoming a much more diverse country. And her point was, if we focus too much on the figure of Donald Trump, we miss the fact that he's really just emblematic of these deeper problems that we've had for centuries. And I wonder, Michelle, if you wanted to if you had some thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I do totally that he is the mirror of the root issue of our country, and it was almost confounding to watch and hear people's conversations regarding Donald Trump, and even in other presidencies, whenever there was a problem, it's almost like in-group, out-group thing. So, like, for example, if my favorite team is the Redskins and we win a game, I'm like, hey, Redskins. But if we lose, I'm like, man, they gonna be all right, or I just won't say anything about it at all. And so with Donald Trump's presidency and how people would talk about Trump this and he's that and he's the problem and that's your president. That also goes back to not, wanting to look deeper, because somebody's feelings are going to get hurt if we go a little deep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like Barakel might be back with us.
Yeah.
Barakel, I don't know if you can hear us or if your connection is better, but we were talking about a point that you made to me when we spoke on the phone about how Donald Trump was certainly a problem, but he was more, in your words, a mirror of the insecurities of so many sort of white voters when it came to racial issues. And I wonder if you're back with us fully, can you talk a little bit about that, just in terms of the point you made to me about how Trump really was more emblematic of longstanding, centuries-old racial injustice that we've grappled with in this country. Are you back with us? Can you hit the unmute button? I don't know if she can hear us. Barakel, are you with us or no? All right. Well, that's too bad. Looks like she's still having some challenges. I wanted to switch a little bit. Chanel, when we spoke before this call, you talked a little bit about some of the stereotypes that you had to deal with coming from Jamaica and being a Black immigrant woman, and how challenging that can be, whether it's in the workplace or in different environments. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how your understanding of race too was formed by your time in Jamaica? Obviously a very different kind of context racially than the United States. And I think people would be interested in hearing a little bit about sort of that perspective and how you might see race a little bit differently, or some of the experiences you've had as a Black woman immigrant.
Well, Mr. John, one stereotype that I always, try to, tell my peers and, people around me is that people, when I, and I'm not sure again, there's always an image when you go out there, in the world, or, the workplace you mentioned, and, anywhere, in society. I feel like, for me, there's a one stereotype that I always, get thrown at me, or a question like, hey, Chanel, you're from Jamaica, do you smoke? I actually got that asked in the workplace, being, especially, being when I was in high school, I used to, run track. I was very athletic and so forth back then. So, being working, and, having my little jobs, being in high school, I always, and still in college, you go out there, I always get that, because again, Michelle, she mentioned culture. And I think that's, it's a form also as cultural identity. People try to, to put, you in a certain image, or, form or ways. And, I always, get that question. And people will actually shock, and I'm shocked because, when they ask me, you're Jamaican and you don't smoke, and I'm just like, I've seen it, in Jamaica, but I'm not used to that in my household, in my family. My family does not smoke, so that does not mean because I am Jamaican, and Jamaican, oh, Jamaicans are known for, smoking, and, so I've always got that question, which I try to be calm, and, and give them a answer, letting them know that in my household and my family does not, carry on with, that, manner of smoking. So no, I do not smoke. And, I believe you asked a question again, John, another follow-up question, John.
No, I mean, I think that gets to it. I mean, I was really interested to hear about how you sort of think about race differently as someone who have been born in this country, growing up a little bit in Jamaica and having that experience. Oh, it looks like Barakel maybe back. Hey, can you hear us, Barakel?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and I'm sorry you've had some trouble there. We want to get you in the conversation. One thing, and this is a little bit a different topic of what we've been talking about, but it's something that you and I had a good conversation about on the phone. You had mentioned this issue of respectability politics, and this idea that with that being something that Black women in particular have to address. I wonder, can you say a few words about that?
Yes. So what I was saying was that there's been a lot of progression in terms of how Black women are interacted with, and in terms of their status in society. However, I feel like the largest roadblock or barrier to progression for Black women at this time would be the respectability politics. It's something that has been, it's something that can become really dangerous, because whenever Black women are victimized, it's often brought up their respectability. For example, there was a police officer that had targeted particularly Black women, and Black and poor women, and in order to rape them. And a lot of the time when these women would come to testify, it would be, the way that they were presented, the way they presented themselves, the fact that they used drugs in the past to show that they weren't reliable. And it's unfortunate because you have to think, he picked his victims so that these people would look like they wouldn't be able to recount what happened, or they would look unreliable because they aren't viewed as respectable in society. And so that kind of thing is very dangerous, and that today is the main barrier to our future as Black women.
Yeah, and I think you may have mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, when we have the conversation about the Black Lives Matter and more kind of in-your-face activism, that sort of respectability politics critique comes up. Can you talk a little bit about, and we want to get you in the conversation too, you're joining us a little later because of tech problems. To say something, if you will, about kind of your experience or your thoughts on respectability politics as it relates to Black Lives Matter, if in the conversation around that, if you see that related.
Yes. So the conversation, let me take these off so that there's no clear. So the conversation around respectability politics for Black Lives Matter has often gone a little like this. How can we expect police officers to respect our lives and to spare our lives if Black people kill each other? And so, unfortunately, there are quite a few flaws with that argument, and yet it's a very prevalent argument. And it brought up with you that there was a rapper named Waka Flocka that a lot of people follow, but he had said that exact thing. And the fallacies of that argument would include, one, that the majority of Black people are not killers. The majority of us are victims of this kind of violence. I lost my uncle to gun violence. Lots of people have lost their classmates to gun violence, and they didn't. And a lot of people have never held a gun before, and so this rhetoric that Black people kill each other, it puts the blame on the majority when really it's a minority of people committing these crimes, and but just at high rates. Like, it's people getting away with it so they can do it again and again and again. And then it's also this retaliation thing where once somebody gets killed, somebody's trying to target the person that killed their family member or their friend. And so it's a cycle. And that's what people kind of ignore. They kind of point out the Black on Black violence as a criticism rather than looking into, like, well, why is it that way? You know, if you look at any other racial group, the percentages of violence rates that are intra-racial, they're very similar. I think that it only differs by about 4%, I believe. The intraracial violence rate between Black people and white people, it's only a 4% difference. So it's not very much to where this criticism should be like merited in any way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make, how we have these sort of distorted narratives around, particularly around violence when it comes to communities of color. So I appreciate you pointing that out. One of your fellow panelists who unfortunately had a family emergency and couldn't be with us today, when I spoke to her on the phone, Shola Chantel, she was a mom and she has brothers, and she really talked about sort of the fear of the police. And we haven't talked about police violence. There you go. We haven't talked about police violence during this conversation, and obviously with the defund the police conversation and this Black Lives Matter bringing this to the fore so much, I wonder, whether it's Barakel or somebody else, how are you thinking about that as young Black women, this issue of police violence? And we can maybe go around. And actually, if you don't mind, maybe we could start with Barakel just because she's missed a bunch of the conversation. So we'll start with Barakel and we'll work our way around.
Okay. So I've heard the defund the police arguments, and I believe that some of it does have merit in terms of reallocating funds that have been excessively going to police departments. I do believe that the people that are arguing to abolish the police, I do think that the alternatives that they've kind of been giving haven't exactly been practical in the way society is right now. what I personally believe is the best course of action that both arguments defunding the police and abolishing the police have brought up is use is using additional programs. So having a social worker going out with police when there is a case that would need a social worker rather than just police officers, because the issue with the police force is that it's very generalized, and they had special forces for different kinds of crimes before, so it's a pretty realistic thing to expect that they can start to develop more specialized forces for other things. I'm sorry.
Michelle, did you want to offer a few thoughts on that?
I actually totally agree with Barakel. I think that a lot of the time police officers are not trained to deal with certain situations like abuse or domestic violence situations where, you know, the solution may just be to lock the person up overnight, but that can cause an even bigger issue once that person, you know, is released and they go back home. And then what was the solution there? How did you fix the problem, right? And so I do agree that the monies need to be allocated wiser, in a more solution-based manner, because I mean, like Barakel said, having social workers going out, and it could be a risk because then you will have to protect the social worker. So there's, you know, different thoughts on that practice, but it's possible. I totally believe that it's possible, especially having someone informed and educated on people, like how people function, what people do, why people behave the way they behave, versus just going in and lock them up or going in and shoot them up. And I also believe that the same way counselors need counseling, police need policing. Police go through the same kind of issues. For example, the domestic violence issue that I just mentioned, they may not, you know, especially within the police force, there may be people that deal with these things at home within their own families that they're not being checked by, or they're not able to talk about, or, you know, it's okay. So because, you know, if a civilian calls and they have the same issue, how lenient are you being with the person who's causing the abuse when you yourself are an abuser? So it's so many different aspects to the individual behind the badge, the individual with the gun, you know, how are they mentally? What's going on with you mentally? And is there support, or is there a program that contributes to the mental health of a police officer? Who is checking the police? Who is doing these mental, you know, like really, you know, holding you accountable to the oath that you took? And is the oath that you took for people of all color, or you're protecting and serving one person? So.
Yeah, I really appreciate your point on who is policing the police, right? The accountability mechanism, that's been an issue for a long time, and also the mental health piece. Chanel, what are you thinking on this topic? I'd love to hear from you.
I'm pretty sure Barakel and Michelle covered all. I totally agree. I think that the police officers, they, you know, there's someone out there you know, ahead that, you know, they should be checked. Like, you know, there's something has to be done, because we, you know, you never know what's going on. And I mentioned before, people, your family, you have your family, not, you know, you never know what's going to happen and when you're going to get that call, being out there. So there's someone at the, you know, the bigger heads, or someone needs to, you know, take in consideration for these procedures with police officers.
I'm just curious, I mean, have any of you felt like you have been like racially profiled, or had personal experiences where you have felt intimidated by police? I mean, Shola Chantel, who unfortunately couldn't join us this morning, talked a little bit about that in relation to being a mom of a young boy and also having brothers. And she talked about what in popular culture we know now as the talk, right? Where she has to have this conversation with her brothers and her son about, the police, we think, or at least in the larger imagination, are there to protect us, but that's often not the case in Black and Brown communities. And I wonder, on a personal level, is that something that you think about? Have you had experiences in that way? And if so, sort of, what do you make of that? And how do we sort of get to the root of that really serious problem? I don't know, Barakel, if you heard my question on that.
I did.
I don't know if do you have some thoughts on that?
So I personally do not believe that I've been profiled by police, but I feel like the experience can be different across socioeconomic statuses. I grew up in the particular area I was in, it wasn't the affluent area, but I grew up in a suburban area, and so where the police presence, it's more so like as needed. They're kind of there with situations, and they're not really in your face, but they're around so that if you needed something, they'd be there quick. And so I feel like I don't have much to say on the topic, so I should probably pass the mic to someone who has more experience in that area.
I'm pretty sure my show has experienced as well, but if you want to go first or me, it doesn't matter. Yes, I have not encountered with any police involvement or anything, but racial injustice and being discriminated, I feel like I've been put in that position before, and I've experienced 2 incidents being a young Black woman in college, and as coming from Jamaica, where where the population is predominantly Black people, I didn't see discrimination and racism being an issue growing up as a young Black girl. But when I migrated here in the U.S., I started seeing discrimination in many different ways, and in a lot of ways and issues on the the streets and in schools. And after moving on here on campus at Trinity Washington University and being in the DC area, I witnessed countless racial episodes from the BLM, the Black Lives Matter protests, to more recently the insurrection on the U.S. Capitol, as my show mentioned earlier. And I feel like personally my experience that came across with racial discrimination sadly occurred on the metro one day, when there was this elderly Caucasian man, and the train was pretty packed. And that day I remember I was going to meet my family in Silver Spring, and the train was really packed. And in my culture and my background and in my household, my parents always taught me to respect my elders, and not just respecting your elders, you have to have manners, and when it comes to your elders. And that day the train was packed, and the Caucasian man, he had a walker or walk stick. So, and I had a lot of bags more than this Caucasian man, and I feel like giving him my seat would make him more comfortable. sitting, in my seat or, next to me or something. But I had my earphones in, and I, had so many bags and stuff trying to get ready to give up and give my seat. But he was so in a hurry, and like, I don't know of, his tone and his tone, and, how he approached me. It was very, very, like, seems like he was harassing me, and he just was giving me, it seems like he was using his privilege by, just giving me, like, looks like, hey, I need to sit. And I was very, like, because I know I was going to give up my seat and let this elderly man sit, regardless of race or anyone. I feel like he's in a position that I'm not supposed to be sitting down. He's having issues. So I want to give him my seat. And I feel like he was just using his privilege by, trying to harass me or something. Cause he even tapped me with his walk stick on my foot. Like, you need to, you need to get up. His voice and everything was just like very scary, and I felt very disrespected at the time and humiliated, because it seems like he was trying to force me to give up my seat on the train. And remind you, I already planned on giving him my seat. So um yeah, I was very, like, it was very distraught for me. And it was not only that, one of the clearest issues I had was taking a summer class in Hagerstown. That's where I've had that issue where in the classroom I took a summer classes there, and there's one day I felt there was one day I felt like I was, being discriminated upon. Was that day taking a chemistry class, and I don't know what this Caucasian girl meant by I don't belong over here, but it just seemed for me that I was, like, in that moment, I felt very, I felt very, like, heartbroken, and I don't know what she meant. Um, it's, again, this, I feel like this racist, issue. And it was clearly racism, because the Caucasian girl, she said to me that it was a group work, and she said to me that I don't belong, I don't belong over here. She said I belong over there, and over there was only, two other Black girls. So I wanted to know what she meant. I didn't know what she meant by that. I wanted to know if she meant by, because at first I was gonna ask her, but she kept saying it. So I didn't want to proceed with the conversation. I wanted to ask, am I not, I don't belong here in the group to participate in the group, because I'm here to get my work done. I'm in the class to get my work done. So I don't know what you meant. Oh yeah, you don't be her words were, you don't belong over here. You belong over there. So I just kept calm, and I looked at my professor, and my professor was Asian, and she did not say anything until after class. She actually said something to me. So she didn't really approach the issue or said anything. And I was very shocked that even the professor didn't say anything, because that was a very, very, clear that, that, yeah, it was just really sad. I didn't like that.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing those experiences with us. I know that can be hard to talk about sometimes, but I think it's important to have these conversations, and I appreciate your candor in offering that. I did want to give Michelle a chance to, if you wanted to add anything on this topic, or we also have a few other topics to cover before we end up. But Michelle, did you want to add anything on this topic in terms of the feeling of sort of the stereotypes, or the feeling of being racially profiled, and what that is like, either if you've experienced that or people in your family?
I have experienced it. I had a couple run-ins with the police. Not that I'm a criminal, okay? But there was one time I was dating this guy, and we had just came from the gym. We went to 7-Eleven to get some snacks, and then we were on our way home, and we got pulled over. And so the police that followed us were at the 7-Eleven, so they had to have seen us go in, come out, and drive off. And so they told us that we were speeding, and we had gone like we were going 50, and we just came from a light. So I was like, what? How does that even make sense? The light was red, we were stopped. How do you go from zero to 60 or 50 in a broke down Nissan? I don't know. But I was just sitting there just like shocked because they asked my boyfriend at the time, where did you just come from? Do you smoke? Just like, what? Like, why are you asking these questions? What about, we're pulling you over? Do you know why we're pulling you over? Just what's the protocol for this situation? And for me, that was the first time I had ever experienced anything like that. I had never been pulled over or been with somebody that's been pulled over.
This was how old were you at the time?
I was,
Was it high school, college?
I was probably like 20, maybe 20.
Okay.
So it wasn't that long ago, but it was a while ago. And there was another issue. I was working at a Dollar Tree. That was my first job. And there was this man that apparently was stalking me. To this day, I don't even know what this man looks like. But my manager and my co-manager were like, Michelle, there's somebody following you. He asks about you. He knows your name. Of course, because I have a badge. So he asked, is Michelle here? And he describes me and stuff. And so one night, she took it upon herself to call the police because she saw him. I didn't know what this man looked like. So the police came and they came up to me and asked me if I knew who the man was that was allegedly stalking me. And I was like, no, I've never seen him in my life. They told me that he was following me around.
I think we lost Michelle there. Hopefully we can get her back.
Is it okay if I add something real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think one thing that's important an important conversation to have when it comes to interactions with police is the proper way to interact with them so that we don't to minimize conflict. And I'm not saying that that it's on us to de-escalate situations. That's not what I'm saying. I'm more so talking about how to respond to certain prompts. So for example, like Michelle had said, when the police ask, do you know why we're pulling you over? The answer to that should be no, because the police will use whatever you say against you later. And so like when we have the talk with young Black men and women, because this kind of thing happens to both sexes in terms of like getting pulled over and everything, that we need to talk about, how to respond to police. Do not give them the notion that you knew that you did something wrong. And don't be like, I was speeding, I was, maybe I have one of my lights was out. Don't give them anything.
Yeah, that's an important point. I think Michelle is back. Excellent.
I'm so sorry. My computer gave up the ghost. I'm sorry.
I think I am having problems too, so I am going to go off video. So one question I wanted to ask, and we've got a few more minutes left, is, for those of you on the panel, who have a faith background or who see religion as important to your life, I mean, how do you connect sort of your faith to racial justice issues, if you do? And I'm just kind of curious. I mean, PBS had a very interesting documentary not too long ago on the Black church and just sort of the important role that the Black church has played throughout our history and being kind of a place of organizing and resistance for civil rights movements and beyond. And I wonder if any of you think of church and sort of that religious framework as connected to how you think about these racial justice issues. Anyone can start there if they want. So just jump in if you want to answer that one.
I'll go ahead. When everything started happening last year in like June, I think, right after COVID and the shutdown and everything, and then you had why am I blacking on this man's name? George, help me. I'm bringing this.
George Floyd.
Yes, not George Foreman, because that's what I was about to say. George Floyd. I'm so sorry. And Breonna Taylor, and just every instance where a Black man or a Black woman or someone of color had been assassinated on live video. And when it happened last year, I was thinking like, wait, like we're in a pandemic? Why is this happening? What is going on? And I tried so hard to wrap my mind around why is this still happening? Like, and I kept trying to ask, like, why? And I broke down and I'm pretty sure a lot of us had a little bit of a breakdown or some moments where it was just like depressing. For me, it really was depressing because I just don't understand how somebody can not like you or try to overpower you because you look different. I don't get that. But I have an accountability partner and someone who I talk to about everything. And so I asked her, I was like, as a Christian, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to behave when everybody around me is angry, when everybody is upset, and for just reasons? Everybody is trying to do something, but what do I do? Because me, I'm not like a jump in the pool when everybody jump in the pool, because I think that's nasty, and germs and stuff. So I try to like think about what I'm going to do and respond, overreact. And so when that happened, it was just like, okay, I prayed and I was like, what do I do? How do I, remain, or stand on what it is on the Christian doctrine, stand on the word of God when I'm so upset or I'm so confused about what to do, how to help. And one thing that she told me was when what we do as Christians, when things don't add up, or when people are acting crazy and everything is just evil and the world is going to crap, right? Is to stand, is to remain on what your truth is, what the truth is that we know it to be, even when you don't understand, even when the answer to the whys are not coming fast enough, is to be true to who you are and not let what's going on knock you down, because you will be shaken. Stuff is going to shake you up. I got shook. I was shook when all that happened, and I still do get shaken when those things occur. But to have faith, have something to have hope in, to have something to stand on and fall back on, it really helps me to just keep my head up. And the fact that I can do that because of my faith, it allows me to be a light for somebody else when they don't know why. I don't know why, but I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna keep pushing. I'm gonna stay true to myself and to what I know that God has given me, because it helps. It helps me. And the person watching me may not be a believer, but they see that I have hope. They're like, well, she's got good energy. Okay, follow me. Let's work together to a solution, instead of, just allowing what's happening to push us down and keep us underground and be an overlooked people. No, I will not be an overlooked people, because I am a people. I am a human, and to be treated less than a dog is inhumane. And so to fall back on the faith, to have Christ, or whatever you believe in, to fall back on, is something to really that really helps me to stay level-headed and not lose my mind when stuff that doesn't make sense to me occurs. So.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that thoughtful answer. We are over an hour, so I want to be mindful of time. But I really want to thank all of you for taking the time today to share your experiences and your stories. I'm really grateful for how honest you were, your candor, and just, your commitment to these social justice issues. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure people watching, your fellow students and professors and the wider community have learned a lot as well. And thank all of you who tuned in to watch. These conversations are part of a online tour I'm doing with Catholic universities called Faithful Activism, Catholic Millennials and Generation Z Speak Out. And our next event will actually be next Friday in partnership with the University of Dayton. And it's a panel discussion called Climate Justice, Faith Activism, and Protecting Our Common Home. So stay tuned for more details on that. But thank all of you again, to our panelists and Trinity University, President McGuire, and so many who helped put this together. And thanks all of you for watching today. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Sorry for some of the tech problems.